Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Poza is a community partner specialist for the program, and he's here with us throughout the series. Well, good morning, John, and we have a guest with us this morning via phone, right?
That's correct. Morning, Joe. We have Diane Barber. Diane is the director of the Pennsylvania Child Care Association, which is a statewide nonprofit membership association headquartered in Lemoyne. Lemoyne happens to be just across the Susquehanna from Harrisburg. And Diane has over 25 years' experience in nonprofit program management and policy development for children and youth. During her career, Diane has provided training and technical assistance at local, state, and national levels on a variety of programmatic and administrative issues facing programs for children. And she's authored and collaborated on numerous articles, publications, and training programs. She's helped analyze and set state and national early childhood and after-school advocacy priorities, and she served on many local, state, and national boards, advisory committees, work groups, and task forces. Welcome to the program, Diane.
Well, thank you very much, John and Joe. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, Diane, I first wanted to ask you, because for our listeners who may not be as familiar, can you tell us a little bit more about the Pennsylvania Child Care Association, which we insiders refer to as PACCA, and what it's all about?
Sure. Actually, PACCA was founded in 1974, primarily focusing on the organizations that provided subsidy and administered subsidy. We were incorporated in 1977. And in the early years, PACCA was operated primarily by volunteers. And I think some of your listeners know that. When community-based organizations get together, typically it's led by volunteers. In 1997, PACCA was selected as the license holder for the Teach Early Childhood project in Pennsylvania. And over the years, that project has supported thousands of early childhood professionals in achieving credentials and degrees. PACCA's current membership, we have about 1,050 members that operate nearly 1,800 or over 1,800 child care centers, group and family child care programs, employing nearly 20,000 staff and caring for over 200,000 children birth through school age a year. Our membership also includes child care information services, who provide the county-wide resource and referral services and administer the child care subsidy system here in Pennsylvania. We also have members who are businesses, consultants, and higher education institutions that are very committed to the provision of high-quality early care and education in Pennsylvania.
Well, and another major focus of PACCA is the role that you play in working with the legislature and other government officials in advocating for funding for quality early childhood programs. Can you give us kind of an update on where we're at right now, especially with the governor's proposed budget and the legislature deliberating on what parts of that budget they may approve and what there still needs to be some work on?
Sure. This is an interesting time of the year. This is kind of the wonky time of the year because things change from kind of moment to moment. We're about to enter the June, and the legislature will be back, and they will be full force on work on the budget. Remember, back in March, the governor proposed an extraordinary investment in early learning when he proposed $120 million to expand the availability of high-quality pre-K through pre-K counts and the Head Start Supplemental Assistance Program that would serve an additional 14,000 children here in Pennsylvania, a significant inroad into what the need is. The governor also proposed using federal dollars to remove children from the child care subsidy waiting list to increase a quality add-on for programs participating in STARS at STAR 3 and 4, and also to provide an additional add-on for STARS providers serving infants and toddlers. These are extraordinary investments, and we haven't seen these. Oh gosh, we've never seen this kind of investment. However, on the other side, Pennsylvania still has a revenue problem and a structural deficit estimated at around $1.5 billion. To do all that he wants to do with his budget, the governor has proposed increases to the personal income tax and sales tax, as well as expanding the base of items and services to be covered. Among those services would be a tax on child care. That is of concern to some of my members. There is a bill, though, in the House recently that passed through the House and is on its way to the Senate that would expand the sales tax from 6% currently to 7%, but would not expand the base, meaning that child care services, senior care services would not be taxed. This is a good negotiating point between the governor and the General Assembly and a very solid, positive step forward. I think that my members, and probably your members who are listeners who have been around for a while and providing child care, remember 2009. So our biggest fear has been a budget stalemate. And our child care providers are still recovering from that stalemate from in 2009 when the budget was not fully passed until early fall. We're optimistic that this bill, that's kind of a good compromise. With this bill, we will not experience a budget stalemate. And while we may not see a budget passed by July 1st, we don't expect something to go into the early fall. This is really good news for everybody. Everybody's taking a breath. It's like, inhale.
Right.
I would imagine you're heartened by the news that's come recently from a number of district attorneys in Pennsylvania, including, I guess, a number of Republican DAs. And they have actually come out in support of the $120 million that Governor Corbett is advocating for early childhood learning. And they cite it as a deterrent to crime later on in the life of children who are at risk. Can you speak a little bit to the correlation between early childhood learning and criminality down the road for some of these youngsters?
Well, I think you've probably heard this, invest now rather than later. And not only are we talking about crime prevention, but we're also talking about the needs for special education services that catch up. And if we invest early, if we give kids a good start, then we mitigate some of the issues that might come down further along the way. We've had some national studies that have addressed this, including the Perry Preschool Project. And some of the calculations are that if we invest every dollar that we invest today, we save $7 to up to $14 20 years from now. It's a far-sighted investment. But I think that, when we talk about the military, we talk about DAs, police, we talk about educators who see the value in investing in early childhood as a prevention for later expenses down the line. I think the press yesterday, the governor and, folks from Fight Crime, Invest in Kids were at the Camp Hill prison. What a better preventative message than to look over the wire and the razor wire behind them and see if we invested $120 million today, or $120 million 10 years ago, 15 years ago, would we have prevented some of those folks that are in the prison from being there today? I think it's a sure bet. I think it's a bet that people want to make. The challenge is that we have support, and now we just have to find the resources.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talked about the Perry study, and of course the other study that was a national study was in 2001 by the Institute for Research on Poverty at the University of Wisconsin. And that definitively showed that school participation that starts at age 3 and 4 was associated with significantly higher rates of school completion by age 20, with, of course, lower rates of juvenile arrest. So the data is there to support it, and we know that we spend an increasingly amount of money on our correctional system, and the difference in what we spend for corrections versus what we spend on quality early childhood is just appalling. I mean, in comparison. So hopefully that will change. But there are other hot issues that are facing us. Concerning, for instance, with the Rising Stars program, and that was designed to help close the gap between state reimbursement for child care subsidy and the true cost of providing quality care. What feedback are you getting from your members on this?
Oh, boy. My phone rings nearly every day. The Rising Stars program, Keystone Stars, and our supports to move programs to quality are extraordinary. I'm using that word a lot. But Pennsylvania has one of the most resourced quality improvement systems in the country. And that would be an easy answer. That's great, Unfortunately, it's not enough. I wish it was that easy. We have resources, and they're wonderful resources, but we're missing. What we're missing is we're kind of at a stalemate because what programs get paid daily to care for children are rates, and the state pays for children on child care subsidy a specific rate. Unfortunately, those rates have not increased since 2007. So imagine having to pay your rent, your electric bill, and buy groceries on what you earned 8 years ago. That's what we ask Pennsylvania providers who serve children on subsidy to do. So our Keystone Stars tiered reimbursement, our Rising Stars resources, helps them move to quality. What do they need to take that next step? But what it doesn't address is how we pay increased costs for electric, rent, utilities, food, and all of those things like that. PACCA conducted a survey last month regarding rates and participation in STARS. We had 276 programs answer the survey. The responders to the survey serve over 31,000 children between birth and school age. 96% of those responders participate in Keystone Stars. 60% of those are at a level Star 3 or Star 4 level. So they're doing extraordinary work in terms of meeting quality standards. We asked them if tiered reimbursement rates for their star level were sufficient to cover the additional costs of requirements to meet that star level, and 81% of them said no. We hope to work with the Wolf administration and the legislature in this coming year to address both rates and Keystone Stars.
I'm going to, if I can, throw you another
Sure.
correlation question.
Sure.
What, if any, is the correlation between paying child care providers higher wages, higher subsidy, and the readiness of a child under their care entering school? Any studies on that correlation?
Sure. I mean, I can't quote the study specifically, Joe. But what we do know is that the quality of relationships is extremely important. So whether we're talking about relationships among peers, relationships between caregivers and children, the relationship between parents and their children. We know that the more positive a relationship is, the better off a child is as they grow older, as they get older. In a child care setting, if we're able to pay staff a living wage, which sometimes we struggle with that, then they're less likely to look outside. So, staff turnover is still a problem in our programs. And when staff move from site to site or from job to job, in order for them to pay for their rent, their electric, and care for their own families, it disrupts the relationships that are built in programs. And we know that that is a huge piece. Years ago, someone quoted a number to me, and we quote kind of the same number in terms of what it costs to run a child care program. And the cost to run a child care program, one would say about 75% of the cost is in staff salaries. And this colleague of mine who works at a national organization also suggested that 80% of a program's quality is based on the interactions between staff, children, staff and their peers, that interpersonal relationship is what builds the foundation for quality.
Absolutely. And not to get off the subject, but, we have environmental assessments that are done by those who participate in quality early learning. And we're in the process of going through a major change to an assessment for early childhood called the Eckers 3. And that the big change with the existing assessment is that teachers are going to be looked at a lot more closely in terms of the rating, and especially in their interactions with the children. Even when the child may be independent, doing something independently on their own, that it's very important that there still be some interaction on the part of the teacher, prompting the child and asking questions of that child. So, yeah, that we know about. Workforce issues obviously are a major part of the core component to improving quality. In terms of the subsidy, we know for those, it's important for those to be able to go to work if they qualify for subsidy and they contribute to our economy. Where are we now, and where should we be heading?
Sure. There was a recent report by the Center for the Study of Child Care Employment that noted that child care workers have experienced no real increase in earnings since 1997. Unfortunately, many of the members of our early childhood workforce are experienced but undercompensated, and for some under-credentialed. The result is a highly uneven playing field on which the wages of teachers depend more on where they work and the ages of children they teach rather than their qualifications. Our Pre-K Counts program actually has a recommended salary level, so that the goal is to not draw off our early childhood certified teachers into the K through 12 school district. But we can do a lot more to support the early childhood workforce. The Teach Early Childhood Scholarship Program that PACCA administers is just one example. As teachers earn credit towards their credential and their degrees, they earn salary increases and bonuses. And the TEACH program is also a shared program, so that not everybody contributes. The employer contributes, the staff member, the teacher contributes, and then TEACH contributes. So everybody is invested in the program. It also has a component that talks about a commitment to stay in the program based on the amount of time they're supported through TEACH scholarship. And again, addressing rates. Rates pay for infrastructure costs, including salaries. If we pay programs, they can pay their staff.
Isn't there a conundrum between paying a child care provider a good living wage and keeping the cost of child care affordable, especially for people who need it most? Low-income single moms, for example. How can this be resolved to the satisfaction of everyone?
Well, it's an issue on the table. One of the things that we're talking about, or actually one of the things that's in another bill that's in the General Assembly right now that would address the child care cliff, okay? And that would be for families who are on subsidy. Sometimes what happens is that a parent might get a small increase in their salary and find themselves off the child care subsidy system. This bill that's in the House now would restructure the child care subsidy system and would expand eligibility from the maximum now, which is 235% of poverty to 300% of poverty. It would also restructure how parents or families pay for child care. So it would be based on income, beginning at 8% of income up to 15% of income. And the thought there is that a small increase won't throw them off. It's also a good bill in terms of fitting into this a national movement to help and to think more about how we stabilize child care, both for children and for families, through the reauthorization of the Child Care and Development Block Grant, which is our primary federal source of funding for child care subsidy, but also for our quality initiatives here in Pennsylvania, like Keystone Stars.
Well, that was very important. I mean, because we had been waiting for quite some time for the reauthorization.
20 years.
Yes.
John, 20 years.
It was a long time coming, so that is definitely a start, but we had to wait for it. But the other thing I just wanted to point out for folks who don't know is we talked about the child care subsidy, and Pennsylvania is not a leader, unfortunately, in that respect, because there are many other states whose subsidy levels are higher. So that is something that definitely will need some work on. But as we move forward, though, Diane, in terms of our partnerships, how are you working with other state and national advocacy groups? And you may want to mention some of the partners that PACCA works with.
Sure. Probably for folks who are in early care and education, you're probably aware of the Early Childhood Summit, which for the last 8 years,
Yes.
PACCA has partnered with the Pennsylvania Head Start Association and the Office of Child Development and Early Learning to host a 3-day conference that this year will be December 2nd through the 4th in State College at the Penn Stater. At that conference, we bring together over 1,100 folks, including direct child care providers, but also families and folks who provide training and technical assistance to experience this kind of 3-day event. And we try to get, great keynotes, great workshops, and we're looking forward to that again this year. In addition to the Pennsylvania Head Start Association, PACCA is a member of the Early Learning PA Coalition, which includes names that you would recognize: the Pennsylvania AEYC, the Pennsylvania Head Start Association, the Pittsburgh AEYC, the Delaware Valley AEYC, Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, Pennsylvania Partnerships for Children. And together we work to kind of craft suggestions for policies and investments in early care and education, including child care, pre-K, early intervention, and home visiting. So these are kind of our state groups, and we've been meeting and working together for, I would say almost 20 years. On a national level, on federal policy, we work with the Early Care and Education Consortium, which is a national organization representing multi-site child care providers, state associations, and other related organizations. In addition, the National Women's Law Center, whose one of their focuses is on early care and education, and specifically child care policy. So partnerships are important and are core to our work. And we couldn't do the work that we did without working with others.
Thank you, Diane. I'll tell you, this has been a tremendous, 25 minutes, not even a half hour discussion. And of course, we could go much longer, but the information you shared was certainly of extreme value to us. And we wanted to thank you so much for being on the show, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to do it again.
And I do appreciate the opportunity. So.
Thanks, Diane.
And that's our program for today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at the same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.